Good morning. My name is Catherine Grant. I am the Southeast Region Director for the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus. The organization I represent works with campus communities across the country that include gun owners and non-gun owners, Republicans and Democrats. I'm also a Georgian. My family dates back 7 generations in this state that I also call home. Today, on behalf of the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus, I stand with GunSense Georgia and Outcry in opposition to 3 bills now before the Georgia General Assembly. House Bill 543, House Bill 544, and House Bill 859. This legislation will have enormous impact on our technical colleges, state colleges, and universities, both public and private, and we strongly believe that they will put the safety and well-being of our campus communities at great risk. These policies will impact over 500,000 students alone, and tens of thousands of faculty, staff, college administrators, and the countless numbers of visitors on our campuses every day. Family members, friends, professional associates, local, national, and international guests, vendors, and service workers. I'd like to make clear that the legislation we're talking about will force both public and private higher educational institutions to overturn their current policies. College administrators will be stripped of their authority and autonomy to decide what is in the best interest for their campus community and be forced to implement policies despite strong opposition from college presidents, campus law enforcement, faculty, students, staff, and the many national and local associations who represent them. And the vast majority of Georgians don't want this policy either. The 3 bills we're going to be talking about, House Bill 544, will force colleges and universities, both public and private, to overturn their current firearms policies and allow concealed guns to be carried and or stored anywhere on campus grounds, on property owned or leased by the university system, including dorms, libraries, fraternity and sorority houses, sports stadiums, student health centers, student unions, and research-backed facilities, to name a few areas. There are no restrictions on where guns cannot be carried by concealed carry permit holders. Bill 859, introduced just last month, will also force public colleges and universities to allow the concealed carry of guns, including long guns. And in Georgia, that means semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s and the open carry of guns. Like House Bill 544, Stand Your Ground statutes will extend onto college campuses. House Bill 543 would eliminate the current requirement of obtaining a permit to carry a gun, with few exceptions, for 21 people 21 years old or older, since background checks are only required for gun purchases made from licensed firearm dealers and not private sellers. Eliminating this permitting process would allow anyone, whether they have passed a background check or not, the ability to legally carry a firearm virtually anywhere on campus without a permit, should either House Bill 544 or House Bill 859 become law. I'd like to point out that there is no training requirement in Georgia of any kind currently to obtain a concealed carry permit or a permit to carry a rifle. In addition, as a result of House Bill 60 passing in 2014, law enforcement both on and off campus are now prohibited by law from asking anyone, any gun carrier, if they're legally permitted to be carrying a gun. To give you an idea of what these policies look like on a college campus, if guns are allowed in student housing, where will they be stored? If guns are allowed in classrooms, what would happen should one accidentally discharge during class, as happened recently in Idaho? Or what happens when a gun is left in a backpack, forgotten somewhere on campus, or stolen? House Bill 544 and House Bill 859 would allow guns in all student health centers, including mental health counseling sessions. What about the campuses that have daycare centers or programs for elementary and high school students? Or what happens or campus faith-based organizations who, as a matter of their ideological convictions, feel that these policies compromise their religious beliefs? What about international students who bring different cultural perspectives that enrich campus life and pay full tuition that adds millions of dollars to our schools' budgets? What about prominent faculty and researchers and students from out of state who can and will take their talents elsewhere? What about students who are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or who are experiencing a crisis caused by an untreated mental illness, or who are feeling high levels of anxiety for so many reasons? Not one of the bills we're talking about this morning answers these questions. In fact, they raise many more. These policies are unfunded mandates, meaning that the cost to implement them has not been appropriated, and they come with a high price tag. In Florida, funds necessary to implement an almost identical bill to House Bill 544, should it pass, is estimated to cost just under $100 million. Where is that money going to come from to cover additional staffing, training, equipment, and insurance? The answer to this and all other questions is, we just don't know. I'd like to introduce Rabbi Peter Berg, followed by students, faculty, campus law enforcement, lawmakers, city mayors who represent campus communities, and Reverend Gary Charles, who will help tell you why, from their perspective, these bills are not good for Georgia. Rabbi Berg.
Friends, good morning. My name is Rabbi Peter Berg. I am rabbi at the Temple, Georgia's largest and Atlanta's oldest Jewish synagogue. I'm here as a member of Outcry, a movement of hundreds of clergy in Georgia, including Jews, Christians, Muslims, and so many others, including our lay leadership. After the horrific Newtown school shooting, a diverse group of Georgia clergy came together to work on the moral crisis of gun violence in our country. We drew inspiration from our scriptures, from the stories of people in our congregations, in our schools, and our neighborhoods who have in so many ways been impacted by gun violence. We invited fellow clergy and people of faith to join us, and we grew to become hundreds of congregations statewide. We are the majority of clergy in the state of Georgia. Together we brought our concerns to the halls of power. We advocated for common sense gun laws. We worked tirelessly to halt the irresponsible guns everywhere law. And we did not defeat that bill, but our voices were heard. And there's a clear message that on the issue of gun violence, all of us agree. That's not an easy task for a diverse group of theological, convicted individuals, leaders of faith. But that, my friends, is the point. On the issue of ending gun violence, we all agree. Although we want key protection for houses of worship, our work is far from finished. So I'm here today specifically to call upon our Georgia legislators to oppose House Bill 859 and its companions, for it is contrary to our values. It is a step towards a more violent, more dangerous society, a society that disregards human life. This is what our coalition of religious leaders from every stream believe, that we have to strive for common sense gun laws, laws that focus on gun safety, that bills such as 859 present us with a false choice. More guns does not equal more safety. Concealed carry practices do not deter crime. In fact, they are correlated with increases of crime in so many states in our country. Most people, including trained professionals, struggle to effectively use firearms effectively in self-defense. And guns on college campuses lead to increased aggression, to unsafe behavior, and to far higher rates of suicide. We are here today to say that we can both respect human life and the Second Amendment at the same time. That is possible if we focus on people instead of on policies. Like thousands of faith leaders, I oppose House Bill 859 because it is another step towards a more violent, less moral society. We know that gun violence in Georgia today stems from so many different sources, and that this problem will not be cured overnight by a singular piece of legislative action. And so, Outcry, this group of diverse religious leaders, renew ourselves today to our principles, that we remember the victims of gun violence and that all life is sacred, that we pray with our congregations each and every day for an end to gun violence, that we educate our communities and our leaders towards solutions, and we advocate for common sense gun laws that make our streets and our sanctuaries, and yes, our schools, more safe. The name Outcry comes from a passage in the Hebrew Scriptures from Habakkuk. Ad ana Adonai shivati velo tishma. How long, God, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Oh, I cry out to you, violence, but you do not save. As a people of faith, we are called upon to be God's stewards of our communities. This means protecting our entire state from gun violence. We do it not because it's a hobby, not because we're not busy during this entire month of January and February. We do it because it's a sacred task and a moral responsibility. Allowing anyone, including criminals and domestic abusers, the opportunity to carry guns into our stores and our parks and our restaurants and our churches and our mosques and our synagogues and our bars, and yes, in our universities, is irresponsible, and it fails the test of good stewardship and leadership. We as Outcry have come together today to stop the madness. It is not our duty to complete the work, but neither are we free to desist from it.
I'd like to introduce Senator Nan Orrock. She's actually come from the legislative sessions.
Thank you very much. I am very proud to stand today with members of the clergy, leaders of the faith community from across our state. And what you see here today is a representation of a sweeping movement. People of faith are saying enough is enough. We have watched, we have spoken out, we have pushed against the insane gun legislation that we see spreading like an evil tide across this state. To have this gun policy, to put guns on campuses, be rammed down our throats and thrown up again in this legislature is an abomination. I am very, very proud to stand with faith leaders who are speaking for countless numbers of Georgians. We hold the majority view that we don't want guns on campuses. All that will result from that is potential for mayhem. Let me point out that we have an incredibly desperate rate of suicide from guns. The spread of these dangerous weapons is bad policy. And I plead with the leadership of this state to put their foot down. The Board of Regents has spoken loud and clear on this repeatedly. This bill would have to have a fiscal note of God knows how much money. When they've done the studies in Texas, when they've done the studies in Florida that face this kind of legislation, it's millions upon millions of dollars. We are not, by by rule, allowed to pass bills that do not have fiscal votes attached. Our university system, our private schools, our campuses across the state are struggling to balance their budget. We have needs in our budget for all sorts of construction and expansion. At my campus of Atlanta Metropolitan College, they are in a 40-year-old building with a library and administration and student services crammed into this tiny, deteriorating space. They need construction dollars. They don't need to be spending money ramping up a massive police presence on their campus to check all these holders of guns and to deal with all that flows in the face-off allowing guns on campus. It's bad policy in Georgia. It's bad policy anywhere in the country. But as Georgians, we need to take our stand here and now. We need to back our leaders of the universities and the schools across this state. I have Georgia State in my district. I have parts of Georgia Tech in my district. I have technical schools, community colleges across the sweep of Atlanta. We don't want it. It's loud and clear the message has been sent. And I very much applaud the faith leaders across our state joining together as Outcry, joining with Guns Off Campus, joining with all the voices of Georgians who say enough is enough. Keep guns off campus. That's the policy that we support. Thank you very much.
You want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Wallace, and I am a third-year student at Georgia State University. I actually have class that I am going to need to attend later today. I have papers to write, tests to study for, projects to finish, and I have friends who will distract me from doing all of the above. These are the only thoughts that any college student should have on a day-to-day basis. And they're the only thoughts that I've ever had, because of my entire time at Georgia State, a school with an open campus in downtown Atlanta, never have I felt unsafe. House Bill 859 threatens to strip me of that feeling of safety and security and every other student. It is a very irresponsible bill. Take it from a college student himself. We are young, we are stupid, we are impulsive, and many would argue that that is why we were attending college in the first place. I especially am worried because at Georgia State, it is a very large school by population and a very small school in terms of campus size. There are many crowded areas at all times during the day. No student should have to worry about whether the student next to him is carrying a gun or not. College should be an environment where students focus on learning and on learning alone. So I ask of you today to please think of your children, think of faculty members, think of students such as myself, because this bill affects no one greater than us. I call upon the state legislatures to please keep that in mind and to please not take away the safety that I feel at one of my favorite places in this world. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Henry Hope. I'm the Director of Public Safety and Chief of Police for Ivy Scott College. I'm pleased to be here today, stand here to voice our opposition to House Bill 559, any law that will permit the carrying of firearms on campuses. We believe firearms on campus in the hands of anyone other than trained and certified law enforcement professionals is an irresponsible law and places us more at risk. We acknowledge the concerns of people, those who are concerned about violent crimes, concerned about mass shootings. However, our response to these situations should not be to add more weapons. Okay? We already have an existing weapon problem. Adding more firearms is not going to help it. This is going to be a difficult issue to tackle from the law enforcement standpoint. We hear the voices of both sides. However, we have to understand the perspective of law enforcement, where you have to go in an environment where you don't know who the shooter is or who the criminal is from the people who are legal gun owners. So I think the bills in itself do not promote the safety that we need on our college campuses. So I implore those who are pushing this bill to please reconsider what it would do to our environment, what it would do to our campus safety enforcement elements. It will prevent challenges I think we're not prepared for, and I think it'll place too many of our college students, too many of our faculty members, too many of our staff members at risk. Education has to take place in a comfortable environment, free of fear of psychological and physical harm. Adding more firearms will not help us to achieve that goal. I'm a person who likes to talk to both sides on all these issues, so I welcome any dialogue from those who are for and against these bills. But I think there are far more disadvantages than advantages to having more guns on campus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Thomas Remington. I'm a faculty member at Emory University. I've taught at Emory for almost 40 years. I've taught a lot of students. I'm a parent and citizen. As a faculty member, I believe we have a responsibility to our students, not just for their education, but for their health and safety. I know from the research on this subject that bringing guns into an environment will increase the risks of accidental and intentional deaths from suicide, homicide, and accidents. We know from studies that in a workplace that allows weapons, the risk of a homicide is 5 to 7 times higher than in a workplace where guns are not permitted. We know that guns in the home are associated with a 22 times higher chance of a death accidentally. So bringing guns onto campuses is an enormously risky and irresponsible thing to do. Students, we know, are at a vulnerable and transitional time in their life. Often they engage in risky behavior or reckless behavior. We know that students abuse alcohol. We know how often students are involved in car accidents, fatal often, or in other events which are injurious or fatal. Bringing guns into the classrooms and the auditoriums, on the quadrangles, will increase the likelihood of an accident. It will also create an intimidating atmosphere that will disturb and upset the atmosphere of academic inquiry and learning. I would also point out that the bills under consideration do not answer the question of how legal liability for the use of these weapons will be financed. Universities are already, by many courts, held legally liable for criminal assault on campuses. Who will pay the insurance? Who will even provide the insurance for our campuses? Quite apart from the issue of beefing up the security forces. The defenders of this legislation will argue that arming students will increase their safety. And that's a bogus argument. It will increase their vulnerability. So I ask the people of Georgia to rise up and oppose this legislation.
My name is Frank Vandal. I've been teaching at Emory Law School for 46 years. We have 3 professors from Emory here today, totaling over 100 years of teaching experience. We have never heard anyone say, let's put guns on campus. My first concern is with the students. I applaud the student that spoke earlier. A huge concern among academic institutions is suicide. The best way to commit suicide is with a gun. We struggle to make sure at Emory that the students get counseling as soon as possible. The other thing is I am concerned for myself. I grade students. They're often unhappy with their grades. Professors have been shot. They come in, they talk, they have a gun strapped on under this bill. What am I to think? You know. And so, in my experience in teaching, a student 2 years ago dropped out of the law school. He had been there for a semester. So technically he was not, at that time, an Emory student. He stalked a married woman. He murdered her, and then he took his own life. The person I replaced at Emory told me that a student came into his office and laid a gun on the table during the discussion about his grades. There are 3 exceptions to 859. The gun cannot be taken into dorms, fraternities, or sporting institutions. Members of the legislature, what does that leave? That leaves my classroom and my office. What the NRA wants to do is to intimidate professors, to toe the NRA line, to tone down the lectures, to back off from what they're saying. I think the Georgia legislature should be in favor of the colleges being responsible for the education, not the NRA. Cost. We do know who's going to pay the cost. The cost will be paid by the students with increased tuition. It'll be paid by the schools. It will be paid by the legislatures. Oh, and guess what? The taxpayers. This is not free. It is going to be expensive. Further, we've heard the word permit. Read the bill. Read the underlying bill. The Carry Everywhere Act. The permit system the legislature has enacted is phony. It does not permit the registration of gun serial numbers. The only reason for a permit system, one of the main reasons, is so we can track shooters. In Georgia, it's such a facade that we can't even track shooters. Further, the underlying legislation is unconstitutional. It violates equal protection. It violates due process. It takes the controversies to the street. We struggle with the law to get the controversies where? Into the courtroom. When you're dead, you don't have access to the courts. You can't get to the courtroom. And further, it's ill-conceived, it's dangerous to the students, faculty, to what they say, bad legislation. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Ted Terry. I serve as the mayor of the city of Clarkston, Georgia. Our community is home to 2 universities and colleges, Georgia State University's Perimeter College campus, as well as Piedmont Technical College. Before I came here today, I spoke with faculty at those universities, students, as well as law enforcement officials who live in my city, and I asked them what their thoughts were. And not surprisingly, universally, those individuals were against this current bill. I'm having a little bit of deja vu here. I was at the Capitol 2 years ago speaking out against the previous bill that passed, known as Guns Everywhere, as we call it, with the concern about allowing guns in our city halls. At the time, there was a lot of talk, and we had a lot of statistics put out here today, But one thing that was very interesting about the way that debate unfolded was eventually they allowed an opt-out for city halls and council chambers. If we had a metal detector or a police officer present, as well as if we posted a sign saying that we do not allow guns, that was our way out. And so naturally, as soon as the law was signed, the bill was passed and signed into law, we took those measures immediately. I do not know of any fellow mayor who has not taken advantage of opting out of allowing guns in their offices and city council chambers. And we've heard a lot today about the majority of students, faculty, and campus law enforcement officials who are opposed to this bill. We've heard about the fiscal impact. And of course, in the press package, there's a very interesting study about workplace violence in places that do allow concealed weapons and how the murder rates go up there. But one thing I really want to point out as a policymaker myself, what is the point of passing a policy that might eventually, and this is it's early in the session, but it may play out like it did 2 years ago, to allow people to opt out of it? Is it political, or is it actually a policy solution? And what I think of is the case of Texas. There was an opt-out provision for private universities, however not public universities. And the last I checked, nearly every private university opted out of allowing guns on their campuses, while the public universities were not allowed to opt out. And so, the deja vu I'm having here is 2 years ago we were talking about this issue, and here we are again today. And the unifying variable is that this is an election year. Simple as that. What is the point of passing policies that don't actually solve the problems we're having? I would argue that we're looking more at the political situation as opposed to smart policy solutions. So I urge lawmakers to reject this bill. Thank you.
My name is Gary Charles. I am pastor here at Central Presbyterian Church and a member of Outcry with Peter and other friends who are with us today. So the question is, who thinks that House Bill 859 or companion bills is a good idea? Who's asking for this legislation? As far as I can tell, the governing body of our university says, no, we have no desire for campus care. As far as I can hear from faculty here and across the state, they're saying, no, we do not want campus care. As far as I can tell, students across the state are saying, no, we do not want campus care. And our law enforcement on our universities are saying, no, we do not want campus carry. So who is for it? I think the simple answer comes in 3 letters. NRA. And the gun industry in this land. And it is time for us to reverse the group that Peter and I belong to, Outcry, is to reverse our title a bit and to cry out. It is time to cry out across the street and say that we do not want this bill or any bill like it, because we have a moral obligation to provide for the safety of those who are in our schools, whether private or public. You've heard all the arguments. I will not reiterate it, but the work now is yours. The work now is to cry out, to speak out, and to make your voice heard again and again, so that people cannot make policies like this without any consequence. This is not bad policy. This is horrific policy. And I call you, those who will be seeing this on television and those in this audience, to cry out. Thank you for being here.